Hold on, I'm doing YouTube now. You're live.
Okay, let's call to order this meeting of the Woodford County Board of Education on August 16th, 2021. And we have 3 members present in person, and Miss Richardson will be joining us as soon as she can virtually. Miss Springate is unable to attend. Mr. Gibson, I think Miss Richardson's having trouble still. Do you have her number so you can check in with her?
Yes, I sent her the code through text.
Okay. We'll wait just a moment while she joins.
How are you, Grant?
Thumbs up.
Oh, she just needs to type that in and enter it.
What's the meeting code, guys?
He asked what the meeting code is.
HEA-INYZN-GWP.
GAP.
All right, slower this time. AG.
Hold on just a second. Mr. Gibson's sending it.
No, it's still.
It was autocorrect.
Is that what it was?
There we go. Turn autocorrect off. I'm done. There we go. She's here.
So it's just
There we go. Welcome.
All right.
Hey,
Hi, Mrs. Richardson. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All right, we have called the meeting to order and done roll call. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our newest member. Lizzie Sharrock is joining us. She's the new student member for the Woodford County Board of Education. And I would ask you, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, or I can tell what you've shared, whatever you prefer? Okay. All right. Lizzie is a varsity golf player on our school team. She is the president of the FFA. She's the president of the 2022 class and has been for the past 2 years. She's the treasurer of HOSA, and some of her favorite subjects are history and English. Lizzie plans to attend Eastern Kentucky University, go Colonels, and major in occupational therapy when she hopes to pursue her doctorate. So we are very excited to have you with us and have the knowledge and value that students bring to our meetings and to all of us.
Thank you. I'm really excited.
she's also a great lunch partner as well.
Very good. If you'll pull your microphone closer, it's tough to hear on here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Thank you very much. Miss Bailey, can you read the public comment for us, please?
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, there are 3 public comments tonight, the first being from John Wilson. Board members, this is the email that I sent you in August 2020. Quote, I'm writing due to the agenda item to pause the new high school project. There is absolutely no reason to pause this project, none. We have to learn to live in this new COVID world. It cannot be used as an excuse to pause this project. The encumbered dollars need to be kept. This community needs you to continue moving forward. Our kids need you to keep doing the hard work of leading us through this. You cannot stop because this isn't easy. You have to proceed because it's hard work and it's desperately needed. So many special needs children are currently marginalized in that high school. We need your leadership to help us correct their situation and meet their needs. Stop kicking the can down the road and fix this now. People are making excuse after excuse on why this shouldn't proceed. Do not let those naysayers stop this from happening. Please do not give in to them and pause this project. Please continue with building a new high school. You are the only people that can get this done. Well, here we are. It's August 2021, and we are no closer to getting a new high school, and issues continue to come to light with the current high school. We are still discussing bonding potential. Do not lose sight of this goal. We have to start this project, and we have to figure out our bonding. My fear is that I will be sending the same email to you in August of 2022. Regards, John Wilson. Mary Jackson. To the board, I understand that there is a new structural issue at the high school. Are we still investigating bonding potential to meet the need of the long term, or are we looking at bonding to continue to patch these issues? If we continue to patch the issues as they occur, we will never get ahead of spiraling costs of staying in the current high school building. It's time to stop the suffering of our children and get them out of that crumbling building. When will we get a new high school? How many more years will this process take? Mary Jackson. Sean Lear. Dear Board, is there an update on the status of the gym at the high school? Are the bleachers safe? Is the gym safe for that matter? Will there be any communication on this situation? Sean Lear. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. The next item on our agenda is a bonding update from Kelly Mersick from Baird. You gotta get really close.
Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? I'm sorry, I feel like I'm yelling into the microphone. I apologize.
That's okay. It's better than not being heard.
It's nice to see everyone today. I'm here with my colleague, Alex Perdue. We had the pleasure of meeting virtually with Ms. Springate earlier and to do a bond training. So, Ms. McHale, we'll catch up with you. Is everything okay? No.
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
We're good.
So bonding capacity is a very dynamic number. It changes almost daily. And bonding capacity might sound confusing to most. It's really borrowing capacity. So it's not much different than going to get a mortgage to see how much you can afford. So it's a simple math of what revenue do you take in and what expenses do you have. And so we thought prudent as your financial advisor, about a year ago, KDE reached out to us and said, school districts can look at bonding over 25 years versus traditional 20 years. So this, I guess it's August 6th, Mr. Martello, Mr. Atkins, and my team went down to KDE and met with their finance team, and they were immediately in support of allowing you guys to look at 25-year bonding in addition to looking at the traditional 20-year bonding capacity. So this slide right here updates you all where your borrowing capacity as of today's interest rate. So with the current restricted funds you have available plus the general fund commitment, bonding capacity is $50 million over a 20-year basis. And looking at it for 25 years, you guys have the bonding capacity to afford $59 million of principal. So that it does obviously cost a little bit more when you stretch out debt, but it does give you access to more principal. Talking with Mr. Martello, I know there's certain alternates, and the cost of the project's still in flux. So we thought prudent as your financial advisor to present all options. In the bottom, bonding capacity changes almost daily related to what's going on in the market. Maybe jobs numbers come out, and there's some thought that the economy is doing well. So typically interest rates go up when the economy is doing well, or maybe something negative happens. So right now, just to give you an idea, if interest rates go up by 1%, bonding capacity drops immediately by $3 to $5 million. So
So
currently, yes.
Kelly, KDE basically is allowing folks to do this 25-year bond to take advantage of the low interest rates right now.
That is correct. And they reached out to us, like I said, a year ago to say if you have any clients that are looking at, or school districts that are looking at projects, be mindful that the 25-year is open on a case-by-case basis. An option for you guys.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Ms. McHale?
No, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you all for having us.
Absolutely. Ms. Glass?
No questions. I learned a lot from the bond training, so I appreciate you coming up and doing that. It kind of does, it's still muddy waters, but it does clear it out a little bit, and I appreciated you coming. That was very helpful.
Thank you very much. We like meeting. I think it's easier to kind of get in the weeds when we meet one-on-one.
Absolutely. Ms. Richardson?
No, I'm good, thank you.
And I would note for the public that the bonding capacity update is going to help with next week's agenda when we have an update from the architect on the construction project status and kind of where we've been at. Mr. Adkins can help update us on all of the meetings that have taken place. So it's kind of a 2-week progress report for everyone. So thank you, Kelly, for coming. We appreciate the information. Mr. Asher, will you forgive me for jumping agenda items, and could you give us the instructional and equity task force update?
You address it. You're the board chair. You address it the way you want to.
I will note, though, for the record, this is the second month in a row. So is this a pattern? Or
I noticed as well.
I'm just kidding.
Ms. Bradley, can I just ask real quick? I'm sorry, I know I signed in late. There was confusion there, but are all board members present tonight, or?
No, Ms. Springate wasn't able to attend.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, my update will be brief. I'll just be honest up front. We're back to school, and that's a wonderful thing. And it's certainly, as far as being in the buildings, we have been prioritizing in-person learning. And these first several days are meant to build relationships, set expectations, and that's exactly what's happening in the buildings. What we are dealing with, particularly at middle and high school, is just adjusting to the numbers, meaning that all of last year there was a significant number of students that were virtual and remained virtual all year. So obviously furniture changes were made, spacing changes were made all through last year. And even though they knew the numbers on paper, but getting them in requires us to continue to adjust on the fly and accommodate. Outside of in-person learning, just want to update you on current numbers on the other modes that we have. When I last stood up here in July 19th, even after that point, things continue to change, significantly change. At that point in time, I talked about the home hospital route, and we do have that. So currently we have 5 students within that route and 4 in process. But then also beyond that time, we did go ahead and we opened up WAVE for both elementary and middle, and then we currently, as I described last month, had it for high school. And so the numbers on those, WAVE Elementary, we have 5 currently. In middle school, we have 6 currently, and then at the high school, 63. So realize that has been a longer process. The interest was there last spring, so we moved forward with the planning for that. At that point last spring, we were high 20s, maybe 30, but it has gone up pretty significantly here in the past several weeks. So we have multiple modes going outside of in-person learning. So I just wanted to update on that. Are there any questions on either side of those?
Go ahead, Ms. McHale.
No, I was just going to ask about resources for WAVE, if basically doubling what you originally thought is going to change that.
Yep, so let me start with high school. We're okay at the moment. The crew, the staff that we had, I described last month that we have a coordinator, and all these people are full-time teachers. Most, if not all of their work is done after school hours, so therefore they're paid additional. So we have the coordinator as well as 4 teachers. If we think we can handle it with that, they think, I should say, they recommended the caseloads right where we're at, but we're right at capacity right now. If we have to take in more students, and let me say, we have closed that application at this point because we are at capacity. But we're
At
looking
all
at
levels?
No.
It's-
I'm just speaking high school right
Okay.
now. Just speaking high school. And feel that's been open longer, right? This has been a longer process. So we did have to close it so we can kind of catch our breath and work with the staffing that we have. There are some individual circumstances we need to look at, but those may also then qualify for the homebound I keep mentioning. So we're really filtering those and just trying to accommodate best we can. There are some cases, I'll be upfront, the application is based on progress in virtual learning environment last year. There are some applications that are denied because they weren't successful last year. And so in denying those, then we steer them to their counselor, social worker perhaps, to look at different options for them. So I was answering your question on high school. So we're okay at the moment. As far as elementary and middle, those are relatively low numbers right now. We do have one dedicated teacher at this point, and then using current staff, but basically part of my team to help put that together and facilitate that. So we certainly are okay at those numbers right now.
Thank you.
Other questions?
So on this, first off, I think it would be helpful for the community if you could share, the thought was that coming into this year, we wouldn't need the virtual platform to the extent that we did last year. And that certainly wasn't unique to Woodford County. Schools all over the Commonwealth kind of pulled back their virtual programming because the need went down. How do you envision the virtual instruction working if kids are quarantined?
Let me answer the quarantine question second.
Sure.
As you said, and there are some districts that are still not offering virtual. We were doing ours based on interest to start with and based on the fact that maybe we would be post-pandemic, but we're not. So that's why we opened it back up. That is front and center on our webpage, WAVE, at all three levels, information sheet and application. Like I said, though, the high school application is not taking anymore at this point. So if community folks need information, it's right there front and center of our webpage. The quarantine question. Actually meeting with our elementary principals tomorrow.
Okay.
But to be quite honest, they did that last year. You know what I mean? We had quarantines of folks that were in person. And so, for example, and I can't guarantee this, but let me just give an example of how it was handled last year at elementary specifically. A student was given a quarantine schedule, and they logged on at 9 o'clock for about 30 minutes and got some whole group instruction, and then went and did some independent work. Logged back on at 11 to get math whole group instruction. That was at elementary level. And it's easier at elementary level when you have maybe just one or two teachers involved. That gets more complicated at the secondary level. So most of it at secondary level is loaded through their Schoology platform so that they can just keep up with their work virtually. I don't know to what extent they are able to maybe get some office hours with teachers. I don't know that yet, but I'll meet with elementary tomorrow and secondary soon after.
Okay. And I think that with, a lot of these updates are going to come through your instructional update each month, but at one point we had kind of COVID updates as an agenda item. We may get to the point where we need to add that back so that we have time to go through any changing information or anything like that. But first off, thank you all for all of the work. I know that this has been, once again, we were right before school started and the whole thing changed. Right. And you guys have done a great job with the plan and with the implementation. I'm very appreciative of that.
Appreciate that. Number of people involved, particularly from my C&I team. We enjoy problem solving. We've got a little more problems than we want to try to solve right now, but we're going to try. So we're constantly adapting, adjusting, and doing the best we can. Go ahead.
It's kind of like one of the word problems on the ACT. If you have 65 kids in quarantine.
Yeah. But I will go back to, we had to do that last year.
Sure.
Even for in-person kids, we had the quarantine. So I don't think that's not doing anything new.
Right.
It'll just be, well, now that I think about it, now that high school has black gold once
I
again,
was gonna ask
there's a
about
little
that.
complication there too, so.
You're doubling their classes, right?
Yep.
So,
There's a lot for you guys to think through and problem solve, and we certainly appreciate the grace that parents and family extend as we figure these processes out.
Right, yes, I do appreciate that, and those that I've talked to on the phone, particularly at for our elementary and middle, just asking for their patience, bear with us as we put this together, because literally we're still in process of doing that. And they all have been very graceful in being patient with us to get started.
One thing I would also add, I shared an email with the board today, and this will kind of fall under the task force updates, from Ms. Prather at the health department, and they are currently doing a dashboard for school-age kids and the number quarantined, the number affected or positive cases, and they've offered to share that with us so that we can share that information with our families on our website as well. So I think that's a good resource for us to have.
that had vaccination rates on it as well, didn't it?
Yes.
For the
Yeah, it's a
18?
great dashboard.
Yeah, it's helpful.
I haven't seen that one, but I do know, and I think that's the plan, Elaine, Bailey? Yes, to put our dashboard back up as well.
Ours or the new one?
I will.
So we actually talked about this today, Kelly and I did. We're gonna meet with Garrett tomorrow to discuss what information should be included in our dashboard. There's two different ways we can go about it. And we're going to lean, of course, the information will come from the health department, and we think that we're going to utilize the information you're talking about, like the daily, how many students are in quarantine or actively a positive case. However, we just wanted to run some things by Mr. Wells before
Of course.
proceeding.
So,
And then we'll go back and retroactively add past cases since the start of school.
okay. So, Ms.
Ms.
Richardson,
Bradley,
I'm sure you couldn't hear that.
Could you just,
I was going to
can you
recap
just
for
give us a
you.
recap on that? We can't hear it on this end, whoever
Yep.
just spoke.
Yep, absolutely. I was going to do that. Ms. Bailey shared that they're going to have a meeting tomorrow with Mr. Wells and Kelly Simpson and Ms. Bailey, and they're going to reach out to the health department and figure out what information we need to share that keeps our parents best informed, and what may not need to be on there, and that they're going to work through how best to put that on our website.
I think we need to keep it a lot like it was last year, or as simple as possible, because our families they need to know just the basic facts. They need to know our cases, quarantines. They need to know that stuff because they may be making decisions about their kids going to school based on that. So we certainly need to make it as simple as possible.
Yes, absolutely, and that is something that I've heard from a couple of families is that they were hopeful to get that information. So thank you all for your work on that. That's a good communication tool for us.
Next portion, just a couple quick notes on our equity update. Typically our meetings here in the past several months have piggybacked along with this meeting, so we just had that. Mr. Atkins was able to join today. Ms. Glass being relatively new to the team, what we spent most of our time doing today was reviewing our progress over the past year and a half and the documents, the structures that go along with that. That was good not only for the new folks and Mr. Atkins, but also for our folks that have been on for a while, just kind of recalibrate there and where we're at. I have mentioned diversity projects several times in this report. We officially released that today to send that out to all staff first. What we also need to do is to communicate that to our student groups, particularly at our middle and high school levels. So we have some plans to do that. What the diversity project is, we're looking for creative ideas of how you can celebrate diversity, educate about diversity, and that can be done in a variety of ways. So we're looking for some creative ideas, and those projects will be funded through the generous donations from WEEF. So just launched today, looking forward to seeing some applications.
That's great. All right, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Asher on equity or any of the other updates he's provided? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move on to our regular agenda for the planning meeting, and the next item is discussing the tax assessment and tax rate reports from the Kentucky Department of Education. And on that, we have an advertising requirement, and we are required to run the ad for 2 consecutive weeks in the largest publication in our county before the tax rate hearing. And so this agenda item will also include approving an ad to be submitted and run in the Woodford Sun. All right, Mr. Martello.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Ms. Bradley, for summarizing that. You did a great job. So the purpose of tonight is there's two. Thank you. The purpose of tonight, there's two areas, and like Ms. Bradley alluded to, we've got to get the ad in the paper, if we so choose, to have a rate that is higher than a compensating rate. We do not have to make a decision tonight to define which rate we're going to adopt, but based on statute, if we have to put in the paper to allow the ability, if we so choose in 2 weeks, to have a rate higher than the compensating rate. So I've got a real quick PowerPoint, just a basics that I was going to go through tonight about the highlights of the process. Okay, turning your slides to the packet to the second slide. Here's the sample ad for the 4%. It's very cut and dry. It's the template that's defined by KDE that they give to all districts. And it's very statute, it's based on statute, so we need to make sure we mirror exactly to the wording of this ad that has to go in the paper. But in summary, the big highlight is it is proposing a tax levy of 71.1 cents based on a 4%, the 4% concept. Again, this approving the ad does not lock you in to the rate tonight. This is just getting the ad in the paper based on statute. So it's cut and dry for that piece. You have to break out how you think you're going to spend additional dollars if you were to do the 4% at the bottom, where it talks about the different areas. You know, those are based off functions. You've seen that in the monthly report based on instruction or transportation and maintenance. Those are not cut and dry, but they're an estimate based off those additional dollars. So let's go ahead and turn to the third slide.
Just 1 second on that. I do want to just make very clear that if the board does approve this ad, the statutory requirement is that you run the ad assuming the 4% tax information is taken that is provided, but the decision is not made until the tax hearing when the board votes. This is just an advertising requirement saying this is what the board has the power to levy. It's not an indicator of how the vote will come out or of the intent of the board. It's just the statutory requirement to advertise it so that people know this is the highest amount that could be a result of the tax hearing.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, and that, Ms. Bradley, and that just keeps your options open. That doesn't say you're taking the 4%. It just says that you could take the highest percent, or you could, the other two.
Absolutely.
The ad just keeps the board's option open.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, Mr. Martello.
Thank you. So turning to slide 3, following the presentation that was requested by last year's format, I went in and did the projection for the general fund on how it would play out as an estimate in the different categories. On the left-hand side, you can see the actuals or the revenue we truly received in FY21, and on the right-hand side, there are estimates. The first thing to note is this is based on a 98% collection rate. This is an estimate based on past trends. The newspaper ad is based off 100% collection rate. Not everybody pays their taxes based off the timelines. So you have to use a multiplier instead of 100% collection. Traditionally, we try to use a 98. Property tax, you can see the amount that's indicated there. Distilled spirits. Distilled spirits is one of the only ones that are just based on estimates. It's not off true dollars, so there could be some fluidity there. So just as a caution, motor vehicle tax, franchise tax for a total. So if you look at the 872,000, that is taking the difference of the actuals from last year. On the left-hand side, the 17.4 million minus the 18.3, or the 18.3 minus the 17.4, gets to be, there's an additional 872,000 for that 4% tax rate. But that's not the only step. Then you have to flow that through and minus out the estimated sheriff fees for the collection of the tax, as well as the seek increase. You'll recall that we, traditionally it's based on a teeter-totter situation. When you have local property tax, there is a, when there's a rise traditionally, there may be a reduction in seek. This has potential to have a reduction in seek. So the net of true dollars is an additional 166. So when you add those up and minus out the 24,000, you get to a little bit over $1 million, or 1.015. So that's what a 4% tax increase would create. Okay?
Okay, Mr. Martello, I've got a couple of questions on things that I don't expect you to be able to give us tonight, but maybe you could bring next week. On the distilled spirits tax, can you please check and see what the average rate of increase has been for the last 5 years?
I can. Now, I will caution you, Ms. Bradley, that number is probably a little bit low as an estimate. I'm conservative.
I understand that.
So, here's your answer to that. It's 92.3% of, when you flow it through the numbers, I budgeted 92.3.
Okay.
And that may be what you're looking for.
No.
But I will run the 5-year average as well.
Thank you. And then why on the motor vehicle tax, why did the rate go down with the 4% increase?
That's one I've got to look at. I think it may be, I need to research, it may be a timing thing. I don't know, because it was a progressive increase.
Okay.
And then when I run it through the formulas, it went down a little bit. It may have been that was such a large jump. And then the progression based off the assessments from the Department of Ed, that's how I backed into that 1.23 number.
Okay.
So that, just as I question the same thing, but that's how it came out through the formula, through the assessment process, and those figures that I get from the department and put in the formula.
Okay.
Okay, moving.
Just one question. When
Yes,
you
ma'am.
say 4% increase, you are not actually meaning a 4% increase to everyone's property taxes, correct?
I think, let me do a scenario of this is a home value at 150,000, home value at 225, or some type of low, middle, and high estimate, and let me bring those back next month.
I think that
But
would
that
be
is
really
correct.
helpful.
Yes.
I just
You are
wanna-
correct. It is
yeah,
not
I
a
wanna
4% increase on the
Right.
tax rates. It's a
Right.
4% increase on the income,
On the income.
on the total assessment.
Right.
And the rate is then calculated backwards, but it is not raising everyone's tax by 4%. It's, you are correct.
I understand. I just wanted to make sure
It's-
that we were clear with everybody that might be listening that we are not talking about a 4% increase.
Yes.
It's not 4% and it's not 4 cents
Right.
either.
Right.
And yes, that is absolutely something that
So
we
I
need.
think
This
that-
time, actually, it's 1.3 cents.
Right. If we were to take the 4% tax increase, it's 1.3 cents on each $1,000 of appraised value of property tax in Kentucky. Is that right, Kelly? Per $100 of assessed value. Okay, thank you.
So moving down, you'll see at the bottom, at the very bottom, and these are very cautionary items. So the 2% increase that we did for the first time in 4 years across the board, as well as the step increase, I'm estimating that's a little bit over $874,000. So that's a caution that you can see just the cost of that salary and fringe increase eats up a majority of that, a little bit over $1 million with a 4%. So the other item to note is we received funding, for a number of years we've been funding the full day kindergarten. Well, we received the additional funding this year for that additional half on full day kindergarten. That was through the SEEK formula. That provided another $600,000. The legislature has only approved that as of today for FY22. So that's a caution in some of these items. Overnight that could go away into the next fiscal year and into the future. It's all based on what the legislature approves. So those are two significant dollar amounts that, just as a caution, that I thought we should point out in terms of significant items for FY22. The third that is not listed, you'll recall that Mr. Atkins and I, in terms of really trying to be efficient with our ESSER $2, went and recoded a number of items for FY21, and there was a significant swing. So we would have been in a deficit budget situation to end fiscal year FY21 had we not done that. So I feel that I've got us into the black to finish FY21, but that was a significant swing where we would have been in deficit budget situation for actuals for FY21. Okay. Any questions there?
I have some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So on the 2%, the number, the 874.5, which is the total cost of the 2% increase to the salary table. What we were told as a board was that a 1% raise would be about $220,000 across the board.
I estimated it at 265 times 3.
So 265 times 3.
I'm sorry, 265 times 3.3. Not a true 2% and not a true 1%, but more a 3.3%. These are estimate figures. It may not be as high. We still got to put all the teachers in and figure out all that fringe.
What's the 3.3?
It's just an estimate trying to do an estimate on trends and looking at staffing.
3.3%, right?
Yes.
The step increase plus the 2%
Yes, ma'am.
increase is estimated at a 3.3%.
Yes, ma'am.
So you do your 265 times 3.3 to get to that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess one question, if you could get the information, is we should be able to calculate the cost of the step increases in the previous year. The numbers that, like I said, that we've been given pretty consistently was that 1% is 220, so we'd be looking at, a 2% being roughly 440,000, and then the step increase would be coming out at like 434,500 a year.
I'm being cautious. I'm being conservative to be safe. That's what I'm recommending, to budget a 265 situation in this instance.
Okay. Yeah, if you could get for me the cost of the actual step increase for last year, that would be helpful.
Now, to go back and do that, I can get you the increase of overall salary and fringe. But to drill down into what you're asking, it would have to be the increase of salary and fringe versus the previous year, which we can talk about.
Would there have been anything other than a step increase?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Well, good question. We did have an increase. If you had an increase in the different fringe expenses, you'd have to, it's not cut and dry, because you may have an element of an increase on retirement or an increase in your workers' comp rate and those different things, not separate just from a set increase on the salary component. So let me run some numbers and see.
Sure,
if I get
thank
what
you.
need. Okay.
All right, are there other questions, Ms. McHale?
The only other question that I had, and I don't need the answer right now, and I assume when we review the financials, we'll talk about this, is what those reclassifications from SO2 looked like. But I think a larger or a broader question for me is what that looks like for the next few years for us, because eventually that money goes away. So I don't want to look at that as kind of we've covered those costs for good going forward. I think that they still need to be addressed.
Absolutely. Ms. Glass?
No questions.
And Ms. Richardson?
No, I'm good, thank you. The only thing I have to say is if anybody comes up to the microphone, if they could just step a little bit closer, it's a little bit hard to hear, kind of make out.
Sorry, Ms. Richardson.
That's okay. I heard you. It's just it's a little bit difficult. I don't know if anyone watching virtually is having a hard time.
All right, so, Mr. Atkins, anything you'd like to add?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm ready to let him go ahead and go through his presentation, and then we'll discuss anything that we need to discuss at that point, I think.
Okay.
Be sure to ask questions as he is going through, though.
All right. Are you, anything more you'd like to share on the tax information?
No, ma'am. I'm just going through. Yes, ma'am. So the second option would be keeping the same rate. If you flip to the next page, at the 69.8 rate, you can see as it flows through at the very end.
You got to lean in a little bit more, Mr.
Sorry,
Martello.
if you'll see as you flow through keeping what we call a flat rate or subsection 1 rate, based off the KDE documentation, is an increase of a little bit over 660,000. Again, it's the same elements, just as a cautionary tale at the bottom, the same numbers, just to be cognizant of. If you flip the page to the compensating rate, when you flow it through, you see an increase of 259,000. And so, with the compensating rate, that very much does not cover the increase to the salary and fringe that we have paying in FY22. So it's already in the hole for that situation. And obviously it's in the hole on the 69.8 as well, but it's more significant with the compensating rate. Okay, any questions?
I don't think so. If you could just get the follow-up information to us, I think that would be helpful.
I will do that.
All right.
Thank you.
So Danny, Ms. Bradley, I'm sorry. We need
an action item to do the ad approval.
Absolutely, that's.
Yep, I was heading that way.
Okay, got it.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the sample ad as presented on the slide that Mr. Martello has given us, which is consistent with the ads that we have run in the past?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I will second that.
There's a second by Ms. McHale. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And Ms. Richardson, if you want to raise your hand. The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Martello.
So, Mr. Martello, get with the Woodford Sun either tonight or in the morning as soon as possible.
Yes, sir.
We have to have this thing done.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. So, Ms. Schrock, now what we'll do, we've completed the planning session agenda. So now we're going to move on to the agenda for next week. And we use this meeting to find out if we have any questions before we need to vote on these matters, and to get these things presented to the board, and then also so that if the community has a question on something that has come come up, they have that week to reach out to their board members or to Mr. Atkins or Mr. Asher or Mr. Martello to seek further information as well. So, we will move on, and Mr. Martello will have you come back in and give your treasurer's report, please.
Okay, thank you. Following the second month.
You're going to have to lean in. Or
following the second month or third month, following the new format, just did a PowerPoint really quick and stepping through. If you turn to the third slide, because it's the same format, we look at the monthly expenditure, the balance sheet, and the cash balance by fund report, where we go into detail on the cash by fund report, but I offer, if anybody wants to look at the other two. If no objections, I'll go ahead and turn to the financial summary report.
Give me just a second. Let us have time to read down through these. Usually we...
Yes.
On our looking at the daycare operations fund, and given that we raised that rate, is that, I know we probably haven't had enough time to see what the impact is on that with only a couple days in session, and are we able to staff ETC to cover as many kids as want to attend? Do you know?
That's a great question. I'll have to get back with you and get with Ms. Hogg. I know there was some staffing constraints in terms of how many kids we could have in the program, but I'll have to follow up with her on that.
Okay, thank you.
The good news is it's progressing in the black.
Yes, absolutely.
Through the year, we'll start to see those tuition dollars help be offset by federal one-time opportunities. So I'll just go ahead and start from the first page going down and focus on the arrows for you on the federal revenue fund. So we had some significant dollars that were recoded, as I mentioned earlier, on ESSER. Plus we're starting to spend into the ESSER 3. And so we, based off timing, we just don't have those reimbursements yet. But they've been put in, and hopefully we'll start to see some of those reimbursements coming back to the district based on a post-reimbursement expenditure program. I'll go ahead and, yes ma'am.
I'm sorry, what was the amount that was reclassed? Do you know that?
It was, when you include the indirect costs, well, first let me answer this. It was approximately $700,000 that was recoded to ESSER 2 that was supporting the general fund or offsetting the general fund for the deficit situation. And then approximately $120,000 for indirect cost out of child nutrition. So north or above $820,000 for the total.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. McKell, I'm not sure I'm hearing everything, but I think you've had a couple of questions now about how we're recoding ESSER or how we did that. And I want to try to touch on that real quickly. You know, we can we can take that ESSER money and we can start a new program, or we can take $350,000 of that and buy 3 new buses. Those 3 new buses are going to be around for 14 years. I mean, that's a long-term investment with our monies. If we can put it back into general fund, then we can use that money any way we want to. And again, it gives us that ability to spread it out and use it. We don't have to use it within the 3 years. So those are just things that we're looking at trying to do. And even over at the department the other day, the reference was made that you should have a pretty flush general fund after all this money has come through. So that's really what we're looking at trying to do, is to just try to put the money so we can use it how we best feel the need.
For sure, and I'm not questioning that strategy at all, but I do think it's important to understand that $350 for buses would not be a reoccurring expense for next year, whereas salary increases are reoccurring expenses for next year and the next year and the next year, just to make sure that we're transparent and clear on cash going forward. So
Yes, ma'am, you're very
yeah,
very
but I'm
accurate.
not
Absolutely.
questioning at all the theory of doing it. I just want to make sure I understand what the impacts are going to be going forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the buses is actually, we buy 3 buses. If we stay on the same timetable, we buy 3 buses each year. But your point is well made that you can't count on the one-time money for reoccurring built-in costs. And I think
Right.
that's what you were.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're exactly right, Ms. McHale. I agree with you.
All right.
And I know I may be having some awful faces, but it's because I'm trying to hear. I can't hear anything.
One thing I would like to point out, and it's just, this is a goal. We may or may not get there, but I wanted to point out that $207,000 unassigned balance, or I'm sorry, 207 assigned balance, those are purchase orders for items that were obligated, tangible items or services that they were not rendered on or before June 30th. So we have to carry that obligation into the next year. My goal for FY22 is when we get into the months of April, May, and June, I really want to have expenditures in and out in a fiscal year. So there are going to be expenditures where, hopefully this doesn't happen, but we have an emergency where an electrical outlet needs to be repaired, or knock on wood, a water fountain breaks or something like that. Well, those things aren't going to, that's a decision that has to be made to get fixed immediately. But some of these other items that we get into May and June, I really want us to look at that so we're not trying to keep track with rolling over purchase orders into the next fiscal year. It's just a different approach. And again, there's some things that we can't avoid, but I didn't really want to try to tackle that being first year and set and have an expectation for staff in the district without clear amount of time. But that's a goal. We may or may not achieve it. This amount was less than it was last year. I want to say off the top of my head, it was $250,000 or $260,000. So we're getting there. It just makes things a lot easier to keep track of, and for me, it makes it cleaner. More so to keep track of. So just wanted to point that out. That's a goal that I'd like to see us do if we could. Going down the CARES, we are nearly have liquidated the CARES dollars. We've received approximately $514,000 and some change. So those dollars are nearly liquidated, as well as the GEARS dollars. Those are liquidated. So we have nearly finished those programs. They've gone to some great concerns and needs with the COVID outbreak. So skipping down to Mr. Gibson's fund, he has a little bit of a rise with those student fees coming in. So hopefully we get back trending in the right direction on those. Turning your page to the second page, or turning the document to the next page, the August debt payments are reflected in that debt service fund. So there's 2 debt payments that occur in the month of August. I'll do a transfer here in the coming months to bring that fund to zero. And the daycare operations we already touched on. So turning the slide presentation 2 slides to the summer feeding graph that Ms. Quire put together, and she does a great job as always. She actually went back and grabbed the data, and you can kind of see it's kind of a light gray, but you can see that in 2018, approximately the lunches were 10,000, fairly the same in 2019. But look at what happened in 2020 and meeting the needs of kids during the pandemic. That's a great thing that her and her staff did. North of or larger than, it looks like about 85,000, 87,000. So that's great. And we're already, we had a large amount in 2021. So great job by her and her team.
Yes, for sure. Our thanks go out to all of the food service folks that took care of a lot of kids in Woodford County this summer.
Very quickly, if you turn your slides by 2, and I wanted to brag about publicly about our maintenance department, and this is not a reflection. Just we had our Mr. Burnett, as we recognized last month, has departed. This is a reflection. The team has worked hard, it's like they do every year, but but one of the goals that I am putting forth in terms of the maintenance department and the new maintenance leadership is I want to document what we're doing in our maintenance department and meeting the needs of kids and schools. So I want to make sure we have work orders documented within reason. I don't want a work order when an individual's in a building, they say, hey, can you look at that outlet? And it takes 5 minutes. That's not my directive to the staff. But if they get called in and they're on a 2-3 hour project where it takes labor and cost, I want that documented, because as a board and as leadership, we need to make decisions off data. We're talking about a high school. Well, if we've got that data, both labor hours and financial, it helps us to make decisions on certain things. So that's my charge to the new person, and we're already stepping in the right direction. You can see in the summer of 20, they completed 36 work orders in the month of August. And then after I've given that charge to the leadership and the people that really do the start of the legwork in terms of documenting this are the schools and the departments. They put those work orders in, and you can see we've always done the hard work, but now it's documented. So getting things resolved. 93 new tickets resolved already through the first 16 days of August, with 58 and 35 open. So here's proof that we have a great team and we get things done in the maintenance department. Okay. Turning the packet 2 slides to the WCS project, high school project. I'm not going to steal Mr. Michael, drawing a blank. Hughes. Thank you. His thunder from Ross Turrent, because he's going to give a report, a status report recap on the great meetings that we've had for the last 6 or 7 weeks on the next meeting. But just something to point out, we talk about stakeholder input and different inputs to make sure everybody's at the table. We've had 26 different faces in the last 6 to 7 weeks by different areas in terms of diverse backgrounds.
What we're trying to do, guys, is we're trying to focus on our professionals in their fields, the plumbers, the electricians, the heating and cooling folks, to give us their input to help us make these decisions about what this facility should look like. We sat with those guys, Mr. Martello, 3 hours the other day. We've had our athletic director in. We've had the principal to high school has been there every day. He's constantly reaching out to staff with questions and sending it back. So we're really trying to get everyone involved. I think tomorrow we're looking at door hardware.
Yes, sir. And so Michael's going to give a little bit of highlights in those individual meetings on some of the topics that were discussed. Not really getting too far into the weeds, but give a high level of the great things and the progress that we're doing to get some decisions made in different areas and get the feedback from the different departments and different individuals in the areas. So with that said, that is the end of my treasurer's report. If anybody has any questions.
I have a question for Mr. Gibson on the technology fund, and just wondered if we could get a little update on how everything went with providing our Chromebooks this year, and how you feel like things are if, heaven forbid, we had to switch to a virtual instruction platform. I know we've seen one county in Kentucky that has reached that level, and I'm not at all saying that Woodford County is there. That is not my intent. Just wondered where you think we are with technology.
Well, the good news is that we've set up 1,300 new devices for the district, so there's lots of new ones, whereas this time last year we couldn't even get them in until November. Second piece to that is every single child in this district has now been assigned their individual device, whether you're an elementary kid, because that's not the way it was done in the past, whether you're an elementary kid or a high school student, you're going to be getting your own assigned devices, meaning the devices can go down at any time. So if we need to shut down school, whether it's district-wide, school-wide, or even quarantine for individual kids,
Sure.
The devices are assigned to each individual kid so they can take them home when needed.
That's great. Thank you. And you were able to get everything this year that you needed, and that's great. That was good planning on your part. Thank you for that.
And some luck with vendors, too.
For sure. All right, thank you. Is there any further questions for Mr. Martello or Mr. Gibson? All right, thank you, Mr. Martello.
Thank you.
We will move on to our consent agenda. Mr. Atkins?
Yes, consent agenda. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. Section 8, approved donation request. Really nothing out of the ordinary. We did find several companies or stores willing to help us with our school supply drive as we went out. They were giving discounts. They didn't really want any credit for it, but they were excited to do that, and we were excited to have them help us. So, Part B, approved fundraiser request. Again, just your typical fundraisers, nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing that really stands out. Approved travel request. Now, we have one that we feel like we need to go ahead and approve, and that is it September, guys, where the FFA are attending camp?
Yes, September 10th and 11th.
We had a couple of more requests on here, but they're up in the spring, and we're just a little bit afraid to go ahead and approve right now, not knowing what COVID's going to look like. If they're restricted to no travel, then we couldn't approve them. But hopefully everything goes well. We'll be able to get those in here soon and get them approved as well. Approve a hardship application. Now, I'm not sure how this works out. Do we discuss this application?
We do not.
Okay.
It's just something that it shows up for board members as an agenda attachment, and it's just typically Mr. Hawkins would just say that he would ask for our consideration on that.
And did you guys receive the information?
We did, yes.
Okay. And from what I can gather, this would be a very quality candidate for a hardship application.
All right, thank you.
If I can pipe up just a little bit, if the board wanted to discuss that, based on the information you received, if you had follow-up questions, you would be permitted to go into closed session for that. So if any board member wants that opportunity, I would need to get you the language for that closed session exception. It's premised on Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, but it's an unusual exception compared to what you usually go into closed session on. So I would just need a heads up so we can get you there with the right scripted motion.
Sure. Thank you, Grant. I think that's something that's helpful for our new members to know if there is a question that you ever have on these. If you let the chair know, then we can set up time for that executive session and have that built into the agenda so that you can go over anything that you would want to know. Hardship applications are something that we see on our agenda each month, and just keep our language very vague during meetings to protect the rights and privacy of our students.
And then E is to approve Home Hospital Review Committee. And speaking with Ms. Cooper and Mr. Wells this morning, I think this is just typically the way this thing's been set up. A couple local doctors, our home hospital teacher, and then Mr. Wells.
Yes. All right, that all sounds
good. Any questions?
No, thank you.
And as always, next week, if there's any item on the consent agenda that any board member would like to pull out individually, we can do that. Otherwise, we just approve them all at once. All right, Mr. Adkins, we'll move on to the regular agenda.
Okay. Do I do this one?
Typically, but I can run through it.
Okay, nope, I'll go ahead and take care of it.
All right.
Accept notification of personnel matters. Now, it is a rather lengthy notification, and here's why, because we've had several staff leave for other jobs. No reasoning for leaving other than probably closer to home, maybe a pay raise, maybe a job advancement. Mr. Wells does all of the exit interviews, and he says we never have anyone with a hurt feeling or something along those lines that has caused them to leave. B, accept notification of payment of bills.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. C, approve meeting minutes of the July 19th, 2021 board meeting.
All right.
D, approve meeting minutes of the July 26th, 2021 board meeting. E, approve addition of .3 to current .7 district-wide music teacher position.
Mr. Atkins, I'm going to stop you for just 1 second. Looking at item D, and having Mr. Chenoweth here this week and possibly not with us next week because he has a scheduling conflict. Typically, we note which board members were in attendance for the meetings, and then a lot of times, if you weren't in attendance, you don't vote on those meeting minutes. But on discussion with Mr. Chenoweth, that is not a requirement. Any board member can vote on the approval of meeting minutes regardless of whether they attended in person or not. Correct?
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Mr. Chenoweth?
The only hesitation I have about that is the clarification that we discussed. It has to be true if you just look at it from a logical point of view. Just by way of example, every other election cycle, you have 3 seats that are up for election. If all three members were replaced and came in January, then you would never have a quorum to vote on the minutes from December because there couldn't be 3 members who attended the December meeting who are also present at the January meeting following an election. So you shouldn't vote on them if you don't have knowledge about what was discussed, what was on the agenda, if you have reason to believe there's some inaccuracy, but there's not a flat out prohibition against voting on minutes just because you weren't present for the meeting. You all have the good fortune of having all of your meetings available online to be watched later, so board members who are absent, I would believe, have a pretty decent habit of watching those after the fact to see what happened in their absence. And that arms you even better to vote on the minutes of a meeting that you were not present for.
For sure. All right, thank you for that, Mr. Chenoweth. And Mr. Adkins, moving on to item E.
Okay, item E is to approve an addition of .3 to current .7 district-wide music teacher position. That position will be used to travel to elementary schools to help to support orchestra in our elementary schools.
That is definitely a needed position. Ms. Schrock is nodding. I think.
I was in orchestra prior to this past year, and I played my violin for like 6 years, and Mr. Marcy has a lot on his plate, so I think that is an excellent item to bring up.
I think so too. I think there are limitations to what a person can do with that many kids, and he has certainly grown our orchestra program, and it is a source of pride for the community and the school district. So that I'm glad to see that on there. I know that the funding for the orchestra position is a little bit different. Is this position going to be funded in the same way? Mr. Asher's coming up.
So, Mr. Asher, you may want, I'm not familiar with how the orchestra.
Yeah, I can answer that.
They said they couldn't hear you, so.
I can speak to that. The .3 is what would be different. We're using title funding. Basically, that is a 1-year commitment to that. Should this plan work, we could look at other sources. I may come back to you to add to that position, perhaps you as the board, not you, Ms. Bradley.
Yeah.
I was looking at you.
Thanks for that.
And basically want to see if this works, because it is exactly that, is to support Mr. Marcy. It gives another person to use that 0.3 amount of time to go to the elementary schools. Our orchestra program has been fantastic over the years, and we need to reestablish because it has, taken a little bit of a hit through COVID.
Sure.
And we particularly want to reestablish at the elementary level, so it allows this other person then to help support and go to elementary schools. Does that answer your question?
Well, sort of. So the 0.3 is being paid out of title funds.
Correct.
So it's the adding up all of the schools together and then using a portion of their title funds for that position.
It'd be out of the district portion.
Okay,
Yes,
so
out
that's
of the
what's
district
unique
portion.
about
Yes.
the way that his position is funded too, is that it's funded out of the district.
Correct.
Right.
Both Mr. Marcy and the current 0.7 are district funded,
Okay.
not from title.
Right,
Like
okay.
I said, this is a 1-year trial
Sure.
using that. Again, if it works the way we want it to, I may come back and say, can we just simply make this 0.7 into a 1 full-time position because the plan worked.
Okay. All right.
And then just one other question from my end. Does the 0.3 mean, does it mean we're going to increase activity at the elementary level? Or is it helping to relieve Mr. Marcy or the 0.7 so that we can attend to all the other students at the other level on the daily basis that they get it?
Both.
Okay.
And what I mean is, years past, we had 2 visits to the elementaries per week. We then went down to 1, and then did 1 collective where it was an after-school program at the middle school. We are looking to go back into the elementaries 2 times a week, and so it would increase that, but yet also increase, I don't know how you word it, but give us the person to do that.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you. That's awesome.
That is great. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Asher. Any other questions, Ms. Glass? Okay. All right. Item F.
Okay, that is the Committee for Better Education, whether or not we want to adopt. Is
Mr.
that
Atkins.
right? Am I on the right one?
Nope, slide up one. Approve the new Woodford County High School Municipal Advisory Services Agreement.
Oh, yes, okay, my bad.
No worries.
Yeah, here we go. Approve new Woodford County High School Municipal Advisory Services Agreement. Mr. Martello, what has changed with that?
Absolutely. The district originally had a contractual agreement with the original company, who we have now as Beard, but originally over 3 years ago, we had a contractual agreement with Hilliard Lyons. So there's 2 things going on here. Number one, Beard acquired Hilliard Lyons a little bit back, as well as that original 3-year contract terms in September, the latter part of September. And so, as you can see tonight, we've had a great working relationship with Beard over the years, as well as Ms. Mersick. This presentation tonight was at no charge to the school district, as well as the training fees year to date, and all the work that this firm and Ms. Mersick has put in well over 3 years. And so we've now come to a point where that contract is about to term, and so we're looking to renew that so we continue this great relationship that Ms. Mersick has provided in the firm. She's been on board the whole time. And just, again, has done a great job. There's not a professional I've worked with that's as timely and responsive in terms of questions in a professional environment. If you send her an email, it may be 8 o'clock on a Friday evening, she's going to respond within the next 2 hours, I assure you. And so, we're far along in this project, and so we want to still maintain that effort. So this is just a simple renewing of the relationship.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Item G.
Okay, item G, approve resolution and membership dues assessments for the Council for Better Education, the CBE, Now, if you'll recall, back in 1988, 89, when CARE came about, this is the committee that pushed that lawsuit for equal funding for counties across the state. This group is actually now addressing the idea of public tax dollars going to private schools. You actually, I have given you this already, but the resolution says it is hereby resolved that Woodford County Board of Education authorizes Superintendent Danny Atkins to take all necessary steps to support the Council for Better Education in its legal challenge to the unconstitutionality of the tax credits in House Bill 563, including the payment of any appropriate dues or assessments related to the school district's membership in CBE or its support of the legal challenge. Now, the dues are, I think they're $1,800. $1,823 for the dues to support this. Adopting the resolution doesn't cost us anything, but if we're going to pay the dues, you need to know that the dues are $1,823 to support this legal move.
And I would add on that if you think about $1,843 spread over our 4,000 students in ensuring that the funding stays in place to guarantee the same type of education that our kids have come to expect in Woodford County, that's a very small price to pay for our students.
Yeah, I can't. It was something like 50 cents a student.
Yeah.
Or something.
That was what I recalled too.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Adkins.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
All right. There is no old business for us to review, and any communications that I have received, I have shared with the board by email, and I don't think there's anything else that we need to go through with that. Mr. Adkins, do you have a need to go into an executive session?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Then hearing that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes 4-0. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Adkins.